Hi, I'm David Davis from ActualTech Media, and I'm excited to be hosting another Spotlight Series interview. On today's episode, I'm glad to welcome Jamison Utter, evangelist at Ordr. Jamison, it's great to have you on.
Thanks, David. It's good to be here.
Absolutely. So I was looking at your website, and I read a really interesting report that you all have recently released called The Rise of the Machines for 2021, The State of Connected Devices. And in there, I learned that enterprise networks are really being overtaken by IoT devices of so many different sizes and shapes. And what I found interesting is that many of these devices are agentless or unagented as you term them. So what does that mean exactly?
Yeah, it's a great question, David. Typically, when people think of the IoT, they think of specifically devices, cameras, televisions, phones, things like that. And that's true. Those are, in fact, the Internet of Things. But there's a whole other category of IoT that is often that is also strongly overlooked by folks. And that's really in the enterprise. We get a lot of systems that run MRI machines or that work in manufacturing and production. They're called HMIs. As well as systems that run our HVAC systems. And these are fully featured Windows systems, just like the desktops that you and I are using right now. However, they're really meant for a single purpose. They just run one program or one system to interact with a machine. Those systems typically cannot have an agent put on them, like an EDR or XDR type, advanced endpoint agent, because they're manufacturer systems. They run a very specific program that is meant to interface with the machine, and that agent might interfere with their functionality. So when we're dealing in health or manufacturing, of course, that's not acceptable, that we would have any kind of interruption. Same thing is even true in HVAC. But those systems now are running things that are really important. Like they're interacting directly with the manufacturing process, they're interacting directly with health systems, or running the entire heating, cooling, or building management of an entire building, yet they can't be agented. Furthermore, there's a whole other category of machines that are often not agented, that are standard systems, standard Windows systems, whether they're servers or desktops, because of the price of agents. Agents are not cheap, right? When we look at the really advanced, good stuff out there, those price points are very, very high for them. They're very effective. However, there has to be cost decisions made about what we protect, what we put that agent on. So what we found in Rise of the Machines is that around 50% of the devices in the network are not able to have an agent. That would be your standard class IoT, medical devices, cameras, printers, phones, all that sort of stuff, as well as about 25% of the remaining 50% do not have agents, although they could. So we really only found between 23 was the actual number, by the way, percent of the devices that could have agents actually do.
Interesting. So you've got these agentless systems, for example, say in a hospital, like the MRI machine or the system that controls the heating and cooling in the entire hospital. They don't have an agent, and the hospital is just kind of hoping for the best on that. So how does Ordr step in and help to solve this problem?
Yeah, that's a great question. And a lot of it is really going beyond asset identification. Right now, a lot of the industry buzz is about know what you have. You can't secure what you don't know, right? That's the big catch term. And I think that anyone who hears that should ask the next question, which is, so what? What if I know everything on my network? What do I do about it? How do I act upon that data? And that's really what Ordr is set out to do, is to first identify things from the perspective of cybersecurity. Not just make, model, serial number. That's interesting and has value to the enterprise. But I need to know, what is it vulnerable to? And I need to know how to protect it. So from that perspective, I have to identify a device's vulnerabilities, how it's connected, what is it able to talk to, and what could it be vulnerable to. Then next, I need to understand how it communicates. So this is where we start to really differentiate from those asset inventory systems, is by analyzing flows of data, which is the method that devices communicate with each other, the path those flows take, and how they interact every day. We use advanced machine learning techniques to begin to understand those paths and those communications. We can then use that data to build proactive policies so that you can either build a zero trust posture around devices that are difficult to understand because there's no documentation, Honeywell doesn't ship you a manual and say, open these ports in your firewall or whatever. Medical devices they just don't come that way. So now you basically have a true to life behavior driven model of communications for your devices that is based on how they interact in your network, as well as how they've interacted in other customers' networks to do proactive policies. Furthermore, you can use that information for detection, meaning if there's events going on in the network that's perhaps ransomware or other malicious activity, we will see that it's a deviation from standard operations that falls outside of the norms, and then allow you to do reactive policies because I know exactly how this device operates every day. Thus, perhaps you don't have the appetite politically in your company to do proactive policies. It's often beyond the realm of technical problems. Now I can say, look, this device is carrying some sort of malicious software, and I need to lock it down so that it doesn't infect anyone else. And I know exactly how and where to lock it down because I know its flow, where it communicates, and I know how it communicates every day.
Fascinating. I mean, there's a lot more to this than I just envisioned. Typically just scanning and seeing what devices are out there, and then, for example, pointing out some vulnerabilities. I love this ability to, develop the baseline and then automate the action or the enforcement after that. So, I mean, what types of companies out there are most benefited by the Ordr solution?
I would say initially, the greatest market penetration we found was in healthcare. Healthcare enterprises are really just starting to enter the world of full digitization. There's a lot of connected devices in healthcare, and further from connected, they're becoming hyper connected. And what I mean by that is some devices will talk to 2 or 3 or 4 places. A nurse's workstation where they're monitoring what patients are doing, some sort of back-end ERP where they're reporting patient data for long-term, and then maybe even to the cloud for maintenance. They've got all these multiple connection points that are hyper connected. They're very mobile. Medicine is very difficult because the things are on the move, right? You're running down the hall with a crash cart or taking, devices out of this wing into that wing, all this sort of stuff that's happening very, very rapidly. So we had a lot of adoption initially in healthcare because of their hyper environments, but we also have good penetration in industrial or light industrial, like manufacturing, warehousing, et cetera, where those environments are less dynamic, but are also hyper complicated because they're trying to connect now real time what we're making and consuming from manufacturing, so my raw materials inbound and my produced things outbound, all the way to the cloud. So now we're those environments are becoming open more and more and more and more to many risks that they never had before, and we allow them this understanding of the network, the connectivity, the flows, which really helps them to secure how those flows happen, when they happen, and where they happen.
Fascinating. I mean, these agentless devices really seem like they would be prime targets for malicious attackers. I mean, if you can shut down the HVAC system at the hospital, then you can, really demand a high ransom. Has that been the case?
Yeah. Luckily, the HVAC systems have been largely unattacked. There have been a few, and we actually have found that about 70+% of facilities managers say they have HVAC systems directly connected to the internet, which is somewhat frightening when you think about that, right? We also tend to lump, just for a note, HVAC and building management together, which includes elevator systems, right? There's all sorts of things that go into that building management function. They're the long forgotten network of the hospitals. But the other systems that are well attacked in hospitals too is admissions. If you think about high impact, low effort attacks, which is what attackers are always after, right? HVAC is an excellent option because like you said, if I shut that down, everyone has to go. But admissions can work very well, and we've actually seen this. There's a case in Germany where a patient was actually damaged, and then several cases recently in America where admissions was shut down and they had to divert. And a diversion, may or may not cause patient damage, but it's certainly not. It's not what you wanted, right? If your closest hospital cannot take you and you have to go somewhere else, who knows, right? There could be traffic. You could only have so many minutes or seconds left, and so it shows us that the most critical systems in a hospital, which is often what these inventory companies talk about being medical devices, it's not true. Each system in the step can be just as important as the next. being unable to admit a patient, being able to control the environment, being unable, right? Each one of these steps has to be thought about as we think about how to secure a hospital the right way.
Excellent point. Well said. This sounds like this could help a lot of companies out there to better, protect themselves and prevent these types of security breaches we're hearing about all the time. How should people get started if they want to learn more about the Ordr solution?
I would say come to our website, ordr.net, and either request a sensor. We do have a program where we can enroll you in a proof of value to show you the sensor, how it works, how all the elements and key components work together. Attend a webinar of ours, or depending on which industry you're in, we have a number of vertical industry papers or other things that might apply directly to a use case that you have.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jamison. I appreciate it.
Thanks, David.
And to everyone out there in the audience, if you enjoyed this Spotlight Series interview, check out others that we have on our YouTube page.